Let's jump right into today's explainer, tracking the incredibly legendary 40-year journey of the Statler Brothers. We're looking at a group that evolved from a local Virginia quartet singing for literal pennies all the way to undisputed Country Music Hall of Fame icons. It is a massive story of endurance, high harmonies, and above all, staying incredibly true to your roots.
Actually, founding member Harold Reid hit the nail on the head. Giving advice to Jimmy Fortune years later, he just said, "Go be yourself. Do what you do best. Don't pretend to be what you're not. If you're true to yourself, the fans will love you." And honestly, that quote perfectly captures their entire 40-year vibe. Authenticity was literally their ultimate superpower.
So, to map out this massive impact, here is our roadmap for today. We've got local roots to Johnny Cash, hit records and high harmonies, a new fortune joins, ruling Saturday night television, hometown heroes of Staunton, and we'll wrap up with farewell and lasting legacy.
All right, Section 1, local roots to Johnny Cash, from high school stages to the Man in Black. Okay, you kind of have to love this origin story. Originally, they were organized in 1961 as the Kingsmen, but they needed a really fast rebrand when another group with that exact name blew up with the hit song Louie Louie. So, spotting a literal box of Statler brand tissues in a hotel room, they made a split-second decision. Don Reed later joked it was a good thing they didn't look at a different box, or they could have gone down in history as the Kleenex Brothers.
The contrast of those early days is just wild. Picture this. They're sometimes paying $10 out of their own pockets just for the privilege of performing local gigs. Then they play the 1963 Roanoke Fair, and Johnny Cash happens to be in the audience. Cash was absolutely blown away by their gospel harmonies and hired them on a simple handshake, just like that. By '64, they were fixtures on his roadshow and his ABC television show, getting a literal masterclass from the Man in Black himself.
Moving on to Section 2, hit records and high harmonies, Grammys, comedy, and country dominance.
So it was their quirky 1965 crossover hit, Flowers on the Wall, that truly catapulted them to superstardom. Written by tenor Lew DeWitt, it's this darkly comedic tale of an isolated guy playing solitaire with a deck of 51 cards. And get this, the song was so massive it won 2 Grammys, actually beating out legendary acts like the Beatles and the Supremes. Plus, it proved its staying power when Quentin Tarantino famously revived it decades later in Pulp Fiction.
After signing with Mercury Records in '69, they utterly dominated the 1970s, churning out 11 top 10 records in that decade alone. But, they weren't just about serious gospel harmonies. These guys had a fearless sense of humor. They actually created these comic alter egos. They performed and even released a hilarious album as a parodied fourth-rate hillbilly band called Lester Roadhog Moran and the Cadillac Cowboys. It just goes to show they never took themselves too seriously.
Now think about this number, 250. That is just staggering. Don Reed was an absolute writing machine, penning over 250 songs. And these weren't just tracks for the Statler Brothers. No, his compositions were recorded by massive industry giants like Elvis Presley, Tammy Wynette, and, of course, their old friend Johnny Cash.
Which brings us to Section 3, a new fortune joins, passing the baton in the 1980s. In 1982, the group faced a huge turning point when Lew DeWitt had to step down due to his battle with Crohn's disease. Enter Jimmy Fortune. Discovered singing at a ski resort in Virginia, Jimmy seamlessly stepped right into DeWitt's shoes, and the synergy was instant. Jimmy, who later joked that the band started with Cash and ended with a fortune, didn't just sing. He wrote. He penned several of their biggest #1 hits of the 80s, including Elizabeth and that incredibly moving tribute More Than a Name on a Wall.
On to Section 4, ruling Saturday night television, bringing variety back to the 90s. Now, TV executives and critics were calling their concept old hat, but defying all of them, their 1950s-style variety show, which was actually heavily inspired by Johnny Carson, became an absolute juggernaut. Debuting in 1991, it became the undisputed #1 program on the Nashville network, holding that top spot for 7 full seasons. They literally brought their trademark music and comedy right into America's living rooms every single Saturday night. Next up, Section 5, Hometown Heroes of Staunton, giving back to the community. Despite all this massive national fame, their local devotion was unmatched. Back in '69, they walked through their local Gypsy Hill Park on the 4th of July, noticed absolutely nothing was happening, and just decided to throw a party themselves. By the next year, they launched the Happy Birthday USA celebration. Over its 25-year run, this free event drew peak crowds of 100,000 people. Imagine that! They brought massive guest stars like Reba McEntire and Johnny Cash right to their small Virginia hometown, all while raising money for local charities.
And that brings us to Section 6, Farewell and Lasting Legacy, the Final Curtain and Hall of Fame. It's really incredible to map out their unparalleled endurance. They stayed at the absolute top of their game from their high school days in 1955, through the rock and roll era, the country pop crossovers, all the way to their tearful retirement concert in 2002. Very, very few acts in the history of recorded music have ever maintained such a high level of relevance and output for nearly 50 years.
Speaking of that final show on October 26, 2002, it was actually the first and only time they ever allowed an indoor concert to be videotaped. Afterward, the original members largely retired back to Staunton, with Don Reid actually becoming a prolific author of 11 books. But Jimmy Fortune kept going. Just 11 days later, a terrified Jimmy played his first solo gig opening for the Oak Ridge Boys. And in true country music camaraderie, the Oak Ridge Boys hilariously rolled apples onto the stage during Jimmy's set, just to mess with him and break the tension.
When you look at their overall accolades, they are firmly cemented as the most awarded act in the history of country music. We're talking 3 Grammys, 9 CMA Awards, 48 Music City and TNN Awards, 13 gold albums, and 8 platinum albums. The sheer numbers really speak to a level of dominance that is just incredibly rare to sustain over multiple decades. And because they genuinely never lost touch with their early days singing gospel harmonies, they achieved this incredible milestone in retirement. In 2007 and 2008, they were inducted into both the Gospel Music Hall of Fame and the Country Music Hall of Fame. They're one of only 6 acts to ever be honored in both prestigious institutions. It proves their crossover appeal wasn't some marketing gimmick, it was a true reflection of their musical soul.
So, as we wrap up this explainer and reflect on this monumental journey of 4 local Virginia boys who went from paying $10 to sing to becoming global icons, it leaves us with a pretty provocative thought. In today's music landscape of viral trends and fleeting fame, what modern group could ever match the 40-year legacy, the deep community roots, and the unwavering authenticity of the Statler Brothers? It's definitely something to think about.